America's COVID commissar Dr. Fauci making the rounds on the Sunday shows this weekend, lamenting the fact that states like Texas and Florida are protecting their citizens from Biden's vaccine mandates. As usual, he claims their orders defy the data. Well, what has the data been saying lately? Talk to you about it in tonight's Hold the Line. Welcome to Hold the Line. I'm Buck Sexton. So we know that Fauci has done a bit of a walk back recently. He, at one point, just a few weeks ago, was saying he wasn't sure if you'd be able to enjoy Christmas or not with your family. Too soon to tell. Remember that, Fauci? Remember what he was saying back then? That was just weeks, not even months ago. And there was substantial pushback, so much so that Fauci even tried to pretend that he had not said the thing that he had said. Well, here is Fauci now telling everybody, oh, don't worry, you should be enjoying everything. You should be enjoying Halloween, Christmas, Thanksgiving, you name it. Here you go.
If you're vaccinated and your family members are vaccinated, those who are eligible, and that is obviously very young children and not yet eligible, that you can enjoy the holidays. You can enjoy Halloween, trick-or-treating, and certainly Thanksgiving with your family and Christmas with your families. That's one of the reasons why we emphasize why it's so important to get vaccinated, not only for your own safety, for that of your family, but also for the good of the community to keep the level of infection down. When you do that, there's no reason at all why you can't enjoy the holidays in a family way, the way we've traditionally done it all along.
So we can enjoy the holidays, it seems. There is the possibility here of enjoying the holidays going forward if you do everything Fauci says. What about those who are upset about, say, Fauci once again moving the goalposts? What about anybody who has criticism of Fauci for, say, calling out college football games as super spreader events over the summer, which turned out to not be the case, but being very quiet about events that tend to be more popular, with mass gatherings that are more popular with Democrats and the elites? Well, Fauci wants you to know that he just thinks that it's really a question of people becoming angry over the data and they act out against him.
I have stood for always making science, data, and evidence be what we guide ourselves by. And I think people who feel differently, who have conspiracy theories, who deny reality that's looking them straight in the eye, those are people that don't particularly care for me. And that's understandable, because what I do, and I try very hard, is to be guided by the truth. And sometimes the truth becomes inconvenient for some people, so they react against me. That just is what it is. There's not much I can do about that.
Yes. It's just a function of people raging against the truth, not looking at Fauci and understanding that he has been wrong time and again, that he pretends that his decision-making is in no way political. Right? It has nothing to do with any of that, of course. And what about how Fauci seems to only ever have criticism for Republican governors, say, people on the right, people who are conservatives, when it comes to how they react to COVID? He'll never tell Democrats somehow that they have overreacted, that they're being too extreme. He didn't, it seems, have any inclination to, say, speak out against CNN with its lies about the taking of horse dewormer by Joe Rogan, which they were using as a means to try to humiliate anybody who had a different view about how to deal with COVID. Here is Fauci saying that the Abbott banning of mandates in Texas, Governor Abbott has said no mandates of any kind. Fauci is opposed to this, no surprise.
Well, I'm not going to make an opining about my personal opinion of any person in office like a governor, except to say that from a public health standpoint, that is really unfortunate, because we know how effective vaccines are in preventing not only illness for the individual, but for diminishing the dynamics of the infection in society. The data are very, very clear. It doesn't matter what I think or not think of Governor Abbott.
Right. Somehow, once again, he pretends he's not going to opine, and then he does. He pretends that there's no politics involved in any of this, and yet takes a highly partisan position, one that is favorable to the Democrats, the Biden administration, and this White House, and everyone who's pushing for the perpetuation, it seems, of COVID lockdowns in one capacity or another, mask mandates, Vaccine mandates, of course, a giant challenge right now. Well, who's right? Governor Abbott, for example, in Texas, people who believe that the mandates have gone too far, or people on the other side who are saying that the Biden administration has the right to just decide everyone should get the shot or else they should be fined and essentially their business destroyed. Here's the governor of Texas speaking out.
There is zero authority in the Constitution that gives the president or his administration the authority to mandate anybody taking a vaccine, and that's why we feel very confident that the state executive order will supersede the federal executive order, because the federal executive order is completely unconstitutional. We want to make sure that our fellow Texans who have been forced into this impossible situation about providing for their livelihood versus being forced to take into their body something they do not want.
Yes. Don't mess with Texas. They actually will fight back. The governor of Texas making a very clear case here about the plenary powers of the states. States can have all kinds of authority, essentially whatever is legislated by or part of the state government's writ, as long as it doesn't conflict with the Constitution and it doesn't have a superseding constitutionally sound federal law. States can do a whole lot of things, but he's not the only one that sees it this way. There's also the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, who opposes the still to be implemented Biden mandate. Here's what he says.
No one should lose their job over these shots. I think we want to protect people's jobs. These are folks that have been working throughout this whole time. They were put in situations where they were exposing themselves to risk knowingly to help others, and they did that, and we considered them heroes just a year ago. Now you're going to let them go by the wayside?
They will let them go by the wayside. They're already doing that. A lot of healthcare workers have been fired in places like New York. Police officers are now at risk of being fired in Seattle in large numbers and other cities where they have vaccine mandates. As if we just get this last little bit, these last few percentages of individuals who work in certain jobs vaccinated, this will all go away. Here's something you might not have seen a lot in the media. Remember how over the summer, speaking of Governor Ron DeSantis in Florida, we were told that Florida was having a terrible time with cases because Ron DeSantis doesn't take the virus seriously, because all those big bad Republicans in the state of Florida refuse to mask or get the shot or whatever. What changed? Because bottom U.S. states per capita when it comes to COVID cases, you will see that Florida is almost very last. And in the lower 48, it is last with 12 per 100,000. Hawaii is at 9. Let's note that New York is at about 25. So New York is double Florida's per capita caseload right now. What happened? We all know what happened. The changing of the seasons. It's getting colder in New York. There'll be more COVID cases. So then what's the situation in the rest of it here? What happened? Oh, they were covering it in a partisan fashion to make a political point and pretending it was about health and safety and just the numbers. All right, cargo ships carrying hundreds of thousands of shipping containers remain moored off the coast as supply chain bottlenecks continue to plague U.S. ports. So where's Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg? Where's he been? Paternity leave. Wow, great timing. We'll have more on that with Monica Crowley when we come back. But I want to tell you about my friends at My Digital Money. Crypto market's heating up right now. It seems like everybody wants to get in on it, right? There's so many digital currencies to choose from. Bitcoin, Ethereum, dozens and dozens of them out there. Well, how do you get started? That's where My Digital Money comes in. It's an easy-to-use, self-trading crypto IRA platform with incredible customer service. It's one of the few US-based crypto companies that'll answer your phone call and help you get started. All right, listen, the crypto market's heating up. This might be the best time to get into this exciting technology-based investment. When it comes to your money, you deserve a team of dedicated professionals who have your back, speak to you honestly, and treat you like a human, not a number. Check them out at mydigitalmoney.com. That's mydigitalmoney.com. Monica Crowley stops by after the break.
Well, certainly a lot of the challenges that we've been experiencing this year will continue into next year. Part of what's happening isn't just the supply side, it's the demand side. Demand is off the charts. Retail sales are through the roof. And if you think about those images of ships, for example, waiting at anchor on the West Coast, Every one of those ships is full of record amounts of goods that Americans are buying because demand is up, because income is up, because the president has successfully guided this economy out of the teeth of a terrifying recession.
Right. Former South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg, that's right, the former mayor of South Bend, the highly unqualified Secretary of Transportation, offering some words of hope there on the supply crisis currently affecting the U.S. More than 250,000 containers remain dead in the water floating off the coast of California. Americans everywhere are experiencing shortages and inflation is through the roof, all with no signs of slowing down. Biden has yet to schedule any public event on the crisis, refusing to answer questions thrown at him. Former U.S. Assistant Secretary of the Treasury Monica Crowley joins me now to give her thoughts on the crisis, and our absentee Transportation Secretary. Monica, good to see you.
Hey, Buck, great to be with you.
So I haven't had the chance yet, and so I'm curious to just hear what your top line take is, so to speak, on the Transportation Secretary being away from his job for 2 months in the middle of a transportation crisis that is affecting the entire United States and much of the world.
Well, having just worked with a cabinet secretary, in my case, Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin during the Trump years, I can tell you that cabinet secretaries cannot do this. This is not a commentary on parental leave or paternity leave or anything like that. This is a commentary on government jobs at the highest levels of the U.S. government. Cabinet secretaries are there, generally speaking, for a limited amount of time. It might be a year, it might be 2 years, it might be the full 4 years of a presidential term. But when you sign on to that, you're understanding that there's a great deal of sacrifice that goes with that, Buck. And that means that you must work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week without basic relief. And your family has to understand that that sacrifice goes into it. The taxpayers pay your salary and you're there to perform a job for your country. So the idea that Pete Buttigieg took powder for 2 months to go on paternity leave, and God bless him and his family, but you cannot do that. And then on top of that, if he were going to do that, he didn't even name an acting Secretary of Transportation to take over his responsibilities in his absence. So he didn't even do that. That would be bad absent a crisis, Buck. But we're in the middle of a major transportation crisis, not only the supply chain crisis that we're in, but also the trucker shortage. And it's all of a piece. But you've got airline workers now walking off the job, Southwest and other airlines because of the vax mandates. You have a convulsion, a perfect storm of a transportation nightmare. And the guy who's supposed to be overseeing all of this and fixing it has basically been MIA.
Transportation Secretary Buttigieg tried to assure Americans that, don't worry, it's going to get better, Monica. I wanted to let you hear what he has to say and respond to it.
What I know is that the holidays are going to be a lot better this year than they were last year, because a year ago, millions of Americans were sliding into poverty who now have jobs. And a year ago, a lot of us were gathering with loved ones over a screen.
Yeah, but the supply chain issue wasn't here a year ago. It seems like it's here now. And that's what his job is about.
Right. Right. And, the holidays are coming up, Hanukkah and Christmas, and that involves a lot of gifts. And a lot of those gifts, Buck, come from overseas. This is one of the big picture things that Donald Trump was trying to fix as president, onshoring a lot of our manufacturing. He was able to establish about 500,000 new manufacturing jobs in the U.S. He was negotiating fairer, more reciprocal trade deals with our trading partners, including China. So Trump was trying to rectify a lot of this. He only had one term, at least so far, in order to do it. So it wasn't enough time. And now you've got a president who's capitulated to the Chinese and to trading partners around the world. And now we've got this huge problem, plus a labor shortage. So even if the goods can get into the port and onshore, you don't have truckers to offload it, put it on the truck, and actually get it to you. So, Buttigieg is talking about this is going to go into next year. I have no doubt about that, unfortunately, because we don't have leadership either at the Transportation Department or in the White House.
What do you think are the biggest areas where we could say there could be improvement for this administration on trade and transportation policy as it pertains to commerce?
How long long do you have, Buck? Because there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But you also have to have the political will to do it. And we have seen that this president doesn't really have the political will to do much in terms of policies that would actually serve the U.S. economy, strengthen the economy, strengthen wage growth. And nor does his transportation secretary. But look, you've got to, I think you have to start with the labor market. And the fact that this administration has paid people more to stay at home than to go to work, that's contributed to the trucker shortage and the labor crisis across the board. But I think you have to really start reining in a lot of these benefits, child tax credit, the enhanced unemployment insurance went away in early September, but you have all of these other benefits from the CTC to rental insurance and rental assistance. You have all kinds of things at play that are actually making it more beneficial to stay home. So labor market is one part of the equation. I think that's critical. And then the spending is the other part of the issue, Buck. And I think if the Democrats were smart, and the only two relatively smart Democrats I see are Senators Manchin and Sinema, who are putting the brakes on this. But inflation, labor market squeeze, paying people more to stay at home than to go to work, all of these things could be softened, if not totally rectified, if you take your foot off the spending pedal, stop all of the additional spending, and then really put your mind to getting people back to work.
Monica, United States Deputy Secretary of the Treasury Wally Adeyemo has a take on this that I wanted you to hear.
Today, we face an economy that's in transition. And as part of that transition, we are seeing high prices for some of the things that people have to buy. But the reality is that the only way we're going to get to a place where we work through this transition is if everyone in America and everyone around the world gets vaccinated. That's why the president continues to be focused on the idea that we get everyone who can vaccinated.
I mean, first of all, everyone around the world getting vaccinated, that would take decades, maybe, if that ever happens, right? I mean, the fact the Biden administration says that is interesting in and of itself. But apparently all we got to do is just everyone has to get the shot, Monica, and the economy is great.
Well, like in New York State, where I'm sitting right now, Buck, about 86% of all adults in New York have had at least one shot. And yet New York is lagging behind a lot of free red states like Florida and Texas in terms of unemployment, productivity, wage growth, and so on. So it's not a question of everybody getting the shot. It's a question of government policies that are holding back this recovery. You know, the recovery started in about May of 2020, May of last year, when President Trump was still in office, and we had millions of people rejoining the workforce. And then when President Biden came into office on January 20th, Trump handed him the fastest economic recovery from any crisis on record. It was a relatively robust economic recovery. And so it's President Biden and his team and the Democrats' policies of high spending, high taxes, high regulation that's slowing this economic growth and basically having the recovery sputter.
Monica, thanks for the expertise. Good to see you.
Pleasure, Buck. Thanks.
All right, vaccine mandates are having real-life consequences for towns and cities around the country as police departments and unions fight to keep their officers on the streets. I'll have more in tonight's Buck Brief. But I want to talk to you about protecting yourself from online criminals. Do you know that the Social Security Administration's computer servers are 45 years old? That the computer servers at Health and Human Services are 50? Maybe that's how cyber criminals hack U.S. Census Bureau's computers, where everything about you is stored. The threat of some cyber thief stealing your credit card isn't your biggest risk. Your massive risk, really, is that he takes ownership of your home. It's called home title theft. The FBI calls it one of the fastest growing crimes. Cyber criminals simply hack into vulnerable government, bank, or mortgage company servers where copies of your home's title is stored. He forges your signature stating you sold your home to him. Then he borrows on your home and leaves you in debt. You won't know until collection notices show up. Protect your most valuable asset. Go to HometitleLock.com and register your address to see if you're already a victim. Use promo code RADIO for 30 free days of protection. Again, that's HometitleLock.com, promo code RADIO, HometitleLock.com, promo code RADIO. We'll be right back. Showdowns between our brave men and women in blue and the cities they protect over vaccine mandates are revving up across the country. In Chicago, Mayor Lori Lightfoot and the police union are trading lawsuits. And in Seattle, a jab mandate takes effect today after the city has already lost hundreds of its officers. So are these cities sacrificing public safety? Let's dive into it in the Buck Brief. It wasn't long ago, it was just a little over a year ago, that people in cities across the country were having cheering sessions nightly for first responders. And of course, that includes law enforcement, police. They are first responders, and they're certainly on the front lines in every respect in our society, including in the fight against COVID, because they're out there and they have to answer emergency calls of all kinds and are interacting with the public and can't call in sick. They can't work remotely from their jobs. So you might think that that would mean there'd be some degree of respect that they would be able to retain when it comes to the government and how particularly state, local, and the federal government interact with them. But it turns out that no, the politics of the moment are such that vaccine mandates are, well, mandatory. That's right, for everybody, including in major cities for law enforcement officers. Well, there is finally some real pushback in the city of Chicago and the city of Seattle. We'll talk about them both. Here is the Chicago Fraternal Order of Police president saying that this situation of the vaccine mandate, it's just wrong.
What do your police officers say? How many of them are vaccinated or are choosing not to?
The numbers we have are probably around half are not. But even the ones that are still, like myself, believe that a forced mandate is absolutely wrong. You know, the reality is we have a profession nobody else wants to do right now. They cannot get anybody to go into this police academy. But yet here she is vilifying the police yet again in a city that has over 185 expressway shootings this year alone, over 280 kids shot this year alone, and she acts like there's nothing else going on but this COVID. Everything from this mayor is a dictatorship. This is all about policy from the top. There was no public outcry for this policy to take effect. She just decided she was going to do it and push it on the entire city workforce across the board.
Ah, yes. This is a moment in time where you see that law enforcement and the need to balance out what's more important in a city, keeping people safe on the streets, keeping crime down, keeping murders, keeping violent assaults to an absolute minimum, or making sure that every public sector employee bends the knee and gets the shot. What's a more important goal? Well, you'd think that in a city like Chicago that has suffered from more than its share of violence, there would at least be some degree of willingness to balance those things out. Some degree of, okay, maybe we don't want to be firing cops when we really need cops. It's a bit heavy-handed, counterproductive. Well, not in Lori Lightfoot's Chicago. The mayor there has decided that the Fraternal Order of Police, the police union there, they're, quote, trying to induce an insurrection against the mandates.
What we've seen from the Fraternal Order of Police, and particularly the leadership, is a lot of misinformation, a lot of half-truths, and frankly flat-out lies in order to induce an insurrection. And we're not having that. If you ignore a directive of your supervisor, or worse, a direct order that's lawfully given, you're going to destroy your career. That is going to follow you forever. Over what? Going to a website, clicking yes or no, and if no, saying that you're going to sign up for testing? Really? That's worth it? I don't think it is.
Yes, the tyrants are the reasonable ones you see. People that are making you do all these things. They're the good people in this. That's what they think. Interesting. By the way, in Seattle, they're also having some major police force pushback. Seattle's deadline was today for vaccination or else. We're still seeing how they're dealing with that. Most of the people who, up to this point, it seems, have been assuming that every cop was going to get the shot instead of losing their jobs, they're going to be disappointed because not every cop has been willing to do that. Here's a Washington police officer who has gone viral for his very earnest and somewhat salty sign-off here. You'll see.
This is my final sign-off after 22 years of serving the citizens of the state of Washington, being asked to leave because I am dirty. Numerous fatalities, injuries. I've worked sick. I've played sick. We buried lots of friends over these years. like to thank you guys. I'd like to thank the citizens of Yakima County, as well as my fellow officers within the Valley. Without you guys, I wouldn't have been very successful, and you've kept me safe and got me home to my family every night. Thank you for that. Wish I could say more, but this is it. So, State 1034, this is the last time you'll hear me in a State Patrol car. And Jay Inslee can kiss my ass.
Jay Inslee can kiss my, you heard him. And there are also police in Seattle who are hanging Gadsden flags, the Revolutionary era banner that people are often familiar with because of its resurgence during the Tea Party movement in the early stages of the Obama administration. Don't tread on me, from patrol cars in Seattle, from people who have served their city and with it served their country, trying to keep people safe, have put themselves on the line, and they are now saying they should not be forced to get a shot that many of them believe they do not need. There is no exemption for natural immunity, let's remember that. So they're actually now, by city order, forcing people to get shots when, medically speaking, there's a very real possibility that there is absolutely no justification whatsoever for the shot. And even beyond that, for those who are young and in good health, they strongly feel that this should be a choice that they're able to make. It's happening all over the country, folks. Loudoun County police officers in Virginia oppose the mandate, and they're trying to tell their community, look, if you start firing a lot of cops, things are going to get rough around here.
This decision has the potential to decimate LPD. Our town could lose a lot of amazing police officers. If you decide to move forward with mandating this vaccine, the loss of officers is on you. And I'm going to come back and ask what your plan is to keep my family and my neighbors safe.
Yes. Do they have an answer to those questions? Plus, even in Baltimore, the Fraternal Order of Police president wrote in a letter to officers, "It is understandable that our members have questions about a policy with so little information being provided by the city. Until the city responds to a right to bargain with these issues or the courts intervene, I suggest you do nothing in regard to revealing your vaccination status as is outlined in the city's policy." So not even telling folks that they should tell them whether they are vaxxed. Come back to all this later on for sure. A new report claims that China tested a nuclear-capable hypersonic missile earlier this year, a claim the Chinese Communist Party is now denying. We'll have more on this threat with a very new, very powerful technology with Senior Research Fellow at the Heritage Foundation, Dean Cheng, when we come back. But let's talk about my digital money. Crypto is hot. There's Bitcoin, Ethereum, dozens of digital tokens out there. So what do you do? Where do you get started? Well, that's why you need My Digital Money. It's an easy-to-use, self-trading crypto IRA platform with concierge-level customer service. It's one of the few US-based crypto companies that will answer your phone call and help you get started. Because your comfort and security is their absolute top priority, they offer an unparalleled military-grade security for your coins, trigger orders to help you secure opportunities for gains or limit losses without having to watch your account 24/7, a play money account so you can test the market and not risk actual money, right? Listen, the crypto market's heating up. This might be the best time to get into this exciting technology-based investment. When it comes to your money, you deserve a team of dedicated professionals who have your back, speak to you honestly, and treat you like a human, not a number. Check them out at mydigitalmoney.com. That's mydigitalmoney.com. We'll be right back with more. Hold the line. According to a surprise report, China tested a nuclear hypersonic missile this past August that circled the globe, demonstrating the communist nation's advanced space capabilities. Today, China denied the report, saying the test was just a, quote, routine spacecraft experiment. This is from CNN. China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson Zhao Lijian said this was an experiment to verify the reusable technology of spacecraft, which is of great significance for reducing the cost of spacecraft use. It can provide a convenient and cheap way for humans to use space peacefully. Many companies in the world have carried out similar experiments. Let's dive into this a little bit. Dean Cheng, the Senior Research Fellow at the Heritage Foundation, he joins now to discuss. Dean, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
So let's talk about this. Why are we reading about a hypersonic missile and space capabilities from China? And one, there seems to be almost a bit of surprise from the media out there, and two, a bit of alarm. What's going on here?
That's a great question. Frankly, I'm somewhat bewildered myself. We know the Chinese have been working on hypersonic capabilities. The DoD's annual report to Congress has listed this as one of the key technology areas the Chinese have been researching for years. This is a capability that the U.S. and Russia are also experimenting with. In fact, both Russia and the United States have done their own hypersonic tests in the last 6 months. What is stunning, though, is if these reports are accurate, that the Chinese orbited this thing rather than simply firing it up and letting it come down as you would with a normal ballistic missile. If the Chinese actually orbited a hypersonic payload, what that means is that every Chinese satellite we now have to think about as a potential nuclear weapons carrier or a hypersonic carrier, because if you smash something into the ground at hypersonic velocities, you're going to wind up doing damage, even if it's just a block of concrete.
And so how far along do we think the Chinese technology is here? I mean, I think a lot of people just reading about this and learning about it perhaps for the first time would be thinking, are the Chinese as advanced, perhaps even more advanced than the U.S. in some of these capabilities? Is that possible? Do we have deterrence against this? I mean, where does this put us in the technological and military technology race?
So in terms of deterrence, it's not clear that this actually changes things. We still have nuclear weapons that can target China, and China has nuclear weapons that can target us. But in terms of the technology, one of the things that people haven't paid much attention to is wind tunnels. That sounds like old technology, right? Except that China has been investing a lot of money in building very modern wind tunnels that can go to very high Mach numbers. This is something we have not chosen to invest in. When you look at the number of supercomputers that China owns and the number of wind tunnels they have, that adds up to a lot of research and development capability. So I would say, yeah, the Chinese are probably equal, if not ahead of us, in the realm of hypersonics.
And when hypersonics become further along and when some of this technology is perfected, what are the applications of this? I mean, you know, it sounds very futuristic. What would it mean if this kind of research continues on? What capabilities would it give the Chinese?
Well, in terms of military capabilities, especially with a hypersonic glide vehicle, you'd have something that could try to avoid our missile defenses. If you smash something at hypersonic velocity into an aircraft carrier, that carrier's out of action if it's not sunk. On the other hand, NASA and others have also been looking at hypersonic passenger vehicles and cargo carriers, so that you could really be able to move people and at least high value small quantities of stuff anywhere in the world in potentially just literally a few hours. I mean, when you consider that it takes 6 to 8 hours just to go to London, the ability to move a special forces team or very important technological items to South Africa, Australia, or Japan in, say, 3 hours would be huge.
Right. Press Secretary Jen Psaki was asked a question today on China's nuclear hypersonic missile technology. Here's what she said.
We've made clear our concern about the military capabilities that the PRC continues to pursue. And we have been consistent in our approach with China. We welcome stiff competition, but we do not want that competition to veer into conflict, and that is certainly what we convey privately as well.
So this White House, it seems, has a pretty quiet-sounding approach to China. I mean, I want to know what you think about it, considering some of the more bellicose rhetoric from the Chinese Communist Party about Taiwan in just recent weeks. It seems like the Biden approach is to just allow status quo. What are they doing?
Well, if I remember right, White House Press Secretary Psaki also said that Kabul was a great success. So suffice to say that I think the assessments that come out of this White House are sometimes a little more optimistic than maybe they should be. This is also a White House that has John Kerry working for it, and Kerry has come out and said, you know what, human rights should take a backseat to climate change concerns. We should start importing Chinese solar panels again. So I see a White House that looks at Kabul as a success, looks at cooperating with China on climate change as being a top priority. And I'm therefore not surprised that they would say, military capabilities, so the Chinese have some. What's the big deal?
How concerned are you that maybe China views this Biden administration as so inept and in many ways discombobulated that going after Taiwan maybe next year, maybe the year after that, who knows, but during this first Biden term, may be something that they decide to do?
Well, I think that the Chinese military, which hasn't fought a war since 1979, understands that it has limitations, it has potential shortcomings. So in that regard, I think that what we're seeing in the Taiwan Straits is an effort to use the Chinese military to pressure Taiwan without going so far as to invade. What worries me is how much our allies can retain confidence in us, especially when you look at the catastrophe, frankly, that was Kabul, and that was a military catastrophe. When you look at an administration that is desperate to have talks with the Chinese, as we saw at Anchorage, and I mean, are we supposed to feel better when John Kerry says President Biden had no idea that France would be ticked off over the AUKUS deal? I mean, talk about kind of ignorant. So that's what worries me, is are our allies going to be confident in the United States, and are our enemies going to be deterred, or are they thinking, this White House, maybe we can get away with things?
Dean, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
President Biden and the First Lady were caught violating D.C.'s mask mandate at a high-end Georgetown restaurant, and the White House defended them. What a shock. We'll have that story coming up in Quick Hits. But let's talk one more time about one of the newest sponsors here on Hold the Line, Fume. Fume is the #1 natural way to quit smoking and vaping. Fume is all about creating positive habits, and here's how simple they make it. Fume created a natural inhaler that allows your body to receive the amazing benefits from some of the world's best super plants. It's a Canadian-made, handcrafted wooden inhaler with no electronics. It makes quitting smoking easier. There's no smoke, no vape, no nicotine, and no harmful chemicals. Fume naturally helps with the pesky hand-to-mouth habit and reduces those nicotine and menthol cravings. And their flavors actually taste great. You need to check them out. This company is amazing. Fume has other areas of support beyond just helping you quit smoking. Head to Breathe Fume, that's F-U-M, breathefume.com/buck, and take their quiz to find out which super plants are best for you. It's quick, easy, and will point you to the specific plants and the research behind them for their benefits. When you use code BUCK at checkout, you'll get 10% off. Breathe in the benefits of the world's super plants today. Don't wait. It's time to quit smoking or vaping. Again, that's breathefum.com/buck, and we'll be right back with Quick Hits. An ESPN reporter chose morals over mandates, and former New York Times journalist Barry Weiss brings common sense to CNN's Brian Stelter on how the world has gone mad. It is time for Quick Hits. First of all, what has been one of the defining characteristics of this era of COVID, lockdowns, and all the rest that we're in? What is something that is true about all this? The elites, it seems, are always trying to, and often getting away with, living under a very different set of rules from the rest of us. Feels like they want us to deal with some things. They want us to have to suffer through the most tyrannical and minute detail of Fauciism, but they themselves can just go about their lives when they really decide they want to. Well, here is the President of the United States, Joe Biden, and the First Lady, who were walking through a dinner after they had dinner at a restaurant in Washington, D.C., which has a mask mandate in place for restaurants. They walked around maskless. Check it out. There you go. No mask, walking through, not eating. What is going on there, folks? Oh, that's right. It's different because Biden, and he's important, right? That's the way this goes. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki didn't say it that way, but pretty much what she's saying here. Here you go.
Well, I think what we were referring to is a photo of them walking out of a restaurant after they had eaten, masks in hand, where they had not yet put them back on yet. So I would say, of course, there are moments when we all don't put masks back on as quickly as we should. But I don't think we should lose the forest through the trees here, and that our objective here is to get more people vaccinated, make sure that that schools and companies around the country can put in place requirements to save more lives and keep people safer. And, not overly focus on moments in time that don't reflect overarching policy.
Right. That's a fancy way of saying, yeah, I mean, come on. It's Biden. He can do whatever he wants. This mask stuff is for you. The mask stuff is for the little people. It's for the unimportant people out there, you and me. And it's not for the Bidens. I mean, it's for show when the Bidens are doing it, but really they don't believe in this stuff. Which is interesting because you'd think that Joe Biden, who's almost 80 years old, even though he is vaccinated, would probably want to be extra careful, right? So if almost 80-year-old Joe Biden feels free to walk around in an indoor restaurant without a mask on, shouldn't anybody be able to? Doesn't that make sense? Yeah. ESPN reporter Allison Williams quit her job over the vaccine mandate because she is trying to get pregnant. She does not want the shot. Here's how she explained it.
I am also so morally and ethically not aligned with this. And I've had to really dig deep and analyze my values and my morals. And ultimately, I need to put them first. In April, they sent out an email to all cast members, as they call employees, saying that they believed the vaccine was the best way forward, but ultimately that the decision to get it was a personal decision. Their values have clearly changed. Ultimately, I cannot put a paycheck over principle. And I will not sacrifice something that I believe and hold so strongly to maintain a career.
Wow. Taking a real stand here and suffering the consequences of following through with her values and her principles. Then there's the no values or principles crowd. People like Brian Stelter, who was completely shocked when Barry Weiss explained to him that we live in an era of left-wing lunacy where they think things are true that are clearly not. Here's how that went.
You're right. There are tens of millions of Americans who aren't on the hard left or the hard right who feel the world has gone mad. So in what ways has the world gone mad?
Well, when you have the chief reporter on the beat of COVID for the New York Times talking about how questioning or pursuing the question of the lab leak is racist, the world has gone mad. When you're not able to say out loud and in public that there are differences between men and women, the world has gone mad. When we're not allowed to acknowledge that rioting is rioting and it is bad, and that silence is not violence, but violence is violence, the world has gone mad. When we're not able to say that Hunter Biden's laptop is a story worth pursuing, the world has gone mad. When, in the name of progress, young school children, as young as kindergarten, are being separated in public schools because of their race, and that is called progress rather than segregation, the world has gone mad.
Yes, it has. Not all of us, though. That's it for tonight's Hold the Line. The No Spin News with Bill O'Reilly is next. Fields High.